Today is December 20th, 2020 in the Christian era. I want to preserve the culture and traditions that have been passed down from ancient times in Japan to people all over the world. In other words, Japan is full of yukai. This is a story or a fictional tradition. First, we need to understand what is happening in reality. To be clear, I would like you to indiscriminately drop hydrogen bombs on the entire Japanese archipelago as soon as possible. The cause and details are unknown, that is, the Japanese look like humans, but have become objects that have acquired special abilities that are no longer humans. The association with infectious diseases is unknown. However, since 1990, all timelines have begun to go astray. Today is December 2020. At the moment, looking at the Japanese people around me, all of them are fine and do not die instantly, so the case fatality rate is low, but I want them to die early. I sincerely hope so. No pathogens, transmission routes, or intermediates that cause infectious diseases are known. However, since China first isolated the gene for the coronavirus that causes acute respiratory failure, the pathogen is coronavirus, which is probably completely irrelevant. In the northern hemisphere of the Earth, diseases such as colds and influenza and mysterious infectious diseases occur in parallel in winter, so all phenomena are incoherent. A characteristic finding of the infection in question is the development of acute respiratory failure in the absence of fever. It causes a strong inflammatory reaction over a wide area of the airways and lungs. The fact that the immune system does not work properly may not exist as an object in this world from the beginning. There are quite a lot of them in this so-called world with mass, but they are invisible to the naked eye and feel like undetectable dark matter. I don't know if it is intentional or conscious, but there are many people around me who are convinced that they are jumping over space and having a physical impact. I want to kill him right now, but I can't kill him because it's a crime. I don't know what abilities they have, but I have no choice but to look up evidence about the truth of the paranormal and leave information. The unfortunate news is that we don't know what the pathogen is, but the phenomenon of doubling infectivity is occurring all over the world. It reports that it happened in the United Kingdom, where research facilities such as the University of Oxford, which develops vaccines, are located, but it seems to be something strange due to the phenomenon of synchronicity. This infectious power-up phenomenon will soon spread around the world. Perhaps the mask has no meaning, and even if you wear a gas mask for anti-biological weapons for poisonous gas, it feels like you can't escape. It happens everywhere, at any time, sees everything. There is no substance that can be blocked. The cause is unknown, and I feel burning pain when I breathe in the air. It's like some kind of air pollution. It goes through a process that is clearly different from the changes caused by mutations in common pathogens. But the timing of infection, latency, and onset is unknown. However, if this is some kind of war of aggression, I don't know the details, but probably the vaccine being developed by the world is a conserved region of coronavirus, and after inserting a gene into a cell, devise a way to produce an antibody as a surface antigen of the cell. It is thought that there is. So the problem is that the pathogens are different. Major developed countries such as the United States and the United Kingdom have grasped the actual number of deaths. If the low case fatality rate remains the same, the infectious disease is likely to end in a mystery around next spring. If vaccination reduces the number of new coronavirus infections, assuming that things have converged, various diseases that cause acute respiratory failure and inflammatory reaction are not recognized as infectious diseases by medical institutions and are left unattended. However, there is no doubt that the number of inpatients is on the rise. There is no effective remedy, but the remedy is almost probable. And humans under the age of 65 can be cured spontaneously with drugs that suppress inflammation, antibiotics, and analgesics. Elderly people are regarded as the number of deaths from normal pneumonia. and the cause and development of therapeutic agents are postponed, and economic activity is urgently resumed.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining the latest coronavirus press conference. Yesterday afternoon, I was briefed on the latest data that shows the virus spreading more rapidly in London, the southeast and the east of England than would be expected, given the tough restrictions that are already in place. And I also received an explanation for why the virus is spreading more rapidly in these areas. It seems that the spread is now being driven by the new variant of the virus, which we spoke about earlier this week and learned about earlier this week. Our advisory group on new and emerging respiratory virus threats, NERVTAG, has spent the last few days analysing this new variant. There's no evidence that it causes more severe illness or higher mortality, but it does appear to be passed on significantly more easily. NERVTAG's early analysis suggests the new variant could increase the R by 0.4 or more, and although there's considerable uncertainty, it may be up to 70% more transmissible than the old variant, the original version of the disease. This is early data and it's subject to review, but it's the best that we have at the moment, and we have to act on information as we have it, because this is now spreading very fast. The UK has by far the best genomic sequencing ability in the world, which means we're better able to identify new strains like this than any other country. The Chief Medical Officer last night submitted our findings so far to the World Health Organization, and will continue to be totally transparent with our global partners. There's still much that we don't know. While we're fairly certain the variant is transmitted more quickly, there's no evidence to suggest it is more lethal or causes more severe illness. Equally, there's no evidence to suggest the vaccine will be any less effective against the new variant. Our experts will continue their work to improve our understanding as fast as we can. So we're learning about it as we go, but we already know enough, more than enough, to be sure that we must act now. So I met ministers on the COVID Operations Committee last night, and again first thing this morning. Cabinet met at lunchtime to agree the following actions. First, we will introduce new restrictions in the most affected areas, specifically those parts of London, the southeast and the east of England, which are currently in Tier 3. These areas will enter a new Tier 4, which will be broadly equivalent to the national restrictions which were in place in England in November. That means residents in those areas must stay at home, apart from limited exemptions set out in law. Non-essential retail, indoor gyms and leisure facilities and personal care services must close. People must work from home if they can, but may travel to work if this is not possible, for example in the construction and manufacturing sectors. People should not enter or leave Tier 4 areas, and Tier 4 residents must not stay overnight away from home. Individuals can only meet one person from another household in an outdoor public space. Unlike the November national restrictions, communal worship can continue to take place in Tier 4 areas, and these measures will take effect from tomorrow morning. All tiers will continue to be regularly reviewed in line with the approach previously set out, with the next formal review taking place on the 30th of December. Second, we're issuing new advice on travel. Although the new variant is concentrated in Tier 4 areas, it is nonetheless present at lower levels around the country. So we're asking everyone in all tiers to stay local. People should carefully consider whether they need to travel abroad, and they should follow the rules in their tier. Those in Tier 4 areas will not be permitted to travel abroad, apart from limited exceptions such as for work purposes. Third, we must, I'm afraid, look again at Christmas. And as Prime Minister, it's my duty to take difficult decisions, to do what is right to protect the people of this country. Given the early evidence we have on this new variant of the virus, the potential risk it poses, it is with a very heavy heart, I must tell you, we cannot continue with Christmas as planned. In England, those living in Tier 4 areas should not mix with anyone outside their own household at Christmas, though support bubbles will remain in place for those at particular risk of loneliness or isolation. Across the rest of the country, the Christmas rules allowing up to 3 households to meet will now be limited to Christmas Day only, rather than the 5 days as previously set out. As before, there will be no relaxation on the 31st of January, so people must not break the rules at New Year. They must not break the rules at New Year. It's very, very important to emphasize that. I know how much emotion people invest in this time of year and how important it is, for instance, for grandparents to see their grandchildren, for families to be together. So I know how disappointing this will be. But we have said throughout this pandemic that we must and we will be guided by the science. When the science changes, we must change our response. And when the virus changes its method of attack, we must change our method of defense. And as your Prime Minister, I sincerely believe there is no alternative open to me. Without action, the evidence suggests that infections would soar, hospitals would become overwhelmed, and many thousands more would lose their lives. And I want to stress that we are not alone in this fight or in taking these types of decisions. Many of our European friends and neighbours are being forced to take similar action. We're working closely with the devolved administrations to protect people in every part of the UK. And of course, there is now real hope that we will soon be rid of this virus. And that prospect is growing with every day that passes and every vaccine dose that is administered. As you know, the UK was the first country in the Western world to start using a clinically approved vaccine. And so please, if the NHS contacts you, then get your vaccine and join the 350,000 people across the UK who have already had their first dose. Yes, Christmas this year will be different, very different, but we must be realistic. We're sacrificing the chance to see our loved ones.
By inoculating BCG in infancy, the onset of tuberculosis is about 52 to 74%, severe meningitis and systemic tuberculosis. It is reported that it can be prevented by about 64 to 78%. The number of people infected with the new coronavirus is small in countries that are vaccinated against this tuberculosis bacterium immediately after childbirth. There are reports that there is no such thing. But what is so puzzling is that BCG and coronavirus are medical and it has no biological relevance or contact. Tuberculosis is an infectious disease caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis and is contagious. Is highly infected with air. Tuberculosis most often affects the lungs, but lymph nodes, bones, brain, organs and eyes. It can occur in any other part of the body. The pathogen is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. At biosafety level 3, BSL-3, is there. Traces of typical tuberculosis found in Egyptian mummies. The route of transmission of tuberculosis is mostly transrespiratory. Generally, very small amounts of tuberculosis invade deep into the respiratory tract and enter the alveoli, reaches and begins to proliferate in alveolar macrophages. Macrophages are natural against intracellular parasites, although it is resistant in the case of virulent bacteria such as Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The antibacterial action of the cells is destroyed and the bacteria grow. The cells die under phagocytosis by other macrophages. Further, the fungus continues to grow. It colonizes the lungs and forms a primary infection lesion. In addition, some bacteria are carried to the regional lymph nodes, causing lymph node disease. Build a nest. During this time, T lymphocytes that received the antigen presentation of Mycobacterium tuberculosis by macrophages were specifically sensitized. Immunity is established. Sensitized T cells produce many types of interleukins by antigen stimulation. Therefore, activated macrophages accumulate in the lesion area where M. tuberculosis is localized, and the epithelioid cell granulomatous tissue. Then, the lesion is covered and eventually becomes dry dairy. Tuberculosis is the #1 cause of morbidity and mortality as an infectious disease in adults worldwide and is the first infection. It is a chronic, progressive infection that often develops later, often after a period of incubation. Tuberculosis affects the lungs as the most. Mycobacterium tuberculosis (M. Tuberculosis first causes primary infection, but acute illness does not occur at that time. That is, most primary infections, about 95%, progress asymptomatic, followed by a latent, inactive phase. Latent infections then reactivate at various rates with symptoms and signs of the disease. First, infectious disease. It is usually non-infectious at the stage and never propagates during the incubation period. Mycobacterium tuberculosis (M. Tuberculosis) is phagocytosed by alveolar macrophages. To initiate the infectious process, there is a need. Bacteria that escape sterilization by macrophages replicate in macrophages and eventually kills host macrophages using the action of CD8 lymphocytes. Inflammatory cells attract to that area causes localized pneumonia, which fuses to form a histologically observable characteristic nodule to do. In the first few weeks of infection, some of the infected macrophages belong to regional lymph nodes, e.g., hilar lymph nodes. It migrates to the PAR node, mediastinal lymph node, and enters the bloodstream from there. Then the fungus is hematogenous in the whole body. It extends to all areas, especially the posterior lung apex, the epiphysis of the long canal, the kidney, the vertebral body, and the meninges. Vaccination, or in patients who are partially immune to past infections with M. tuberculosis or acid-fast bacilli in the environment, is less likely to have hematogenous dissemination. BCG is not vaccinated in some countries, such as the United States. Countries that receive regular BCG vaccinations, Japan, China, South Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, etc., have few infected people. It seems that many countries, Italy, Spain, the United States, France, the United Kingdom, have not been vaccinated. Mumps virus. When the causative mumps virus invades the body, it proliferates in mucous membranes such as the nose and throat and lymph nodes such as the neck. However, it is carried to the whole body by blood and spreads. The inflammatory response is initiated within hours of infection or wounding and is characterized by edema, or swelling, heat, redness, and pain at the site. The inflammatory response is initiated within hours of infection or wounding and is characterized by edema, or swelling, heat, redness, and pain at the site of an infection or injury. These characteristics reflect 4 changes in local blood vessels. 1. The heat and redness during inflammation is the result of an increase in vascular diameter. The increase in vascular diameter also results in slower blood flow. 2. There is an increase in vascular permeability. During inflammation, endothelial cells have gaps between them. Fluid from the blood exits and accumulates in local tissues, resulting in edema and pain. The fluid contains plasma proteins such as complement proteins and mannose-binding lectin, which aid in defending against pathogens. 3. Endothelial cells, which line the walls of blood vessels, are activated during inflammation. That is, endothelial cells express cell adhesion molecules that promote the binding of circulating leukocytes, otherwise known as white blood cells. 4. There is clotting in the microvessels at the site of infection, which prevents pathogens from spreading via the blood. The purpose of the inflammatory response is threefold. 1. Allows the body to defend itself from invading microorganisms. The increase in vascular diameter, along with the activated endothelial cells, results in leukocytes being able to attach to the endothelium, and then migrate into the tissues where they can attack pathogens. This process of leukocytes leaving the bloodstream and entering tissues is called extravasation. 2. Induces local blood clotting, and this creates a physical barrier preventing the infection from spreading into the bloodstream. 3. Promotes the repair of injured tissue. The state of inflammation is set up when tissues are physically damaged or when pathogens are recognized by macrophages and later by other white blood cells. These circumstances induces the release of a variety of inflammatory mediators which cause the inflammatory response. Macrophages and neutrophils secrete prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and platelet-activating factor (PAF), which are lipid mediators of inflammation. Then, macrophages secrete cytokines, which are substances released by cells of the immune system that affect other cells. One kind of cytokine are chemokines, which act as chemoattractants. Chemokines cause directed chemotaxis. Chemokines direct phagocytes to move towards the source of the chemokines, which are the sites where they are needed. Two cytokines important to the inflammatory response are C5 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, or TNF-alpha. C5 stimulates respiratory burst, which is the rapid release of reactive oxygen species. It attracts neutrophils and monocytes. It also increases vascular permeability, increases expression of adhesion molecules on the endothelium, and causes local mast cells to release granules containing the inflammatory molecule histamine and TNF-alpha. TNF-alpha is a potent activator of endothelial cells. Activation of endothelial cells is central to the inflammatory response. Cytokines produced by macrophages, especially TNF-alpha, cause endothelial cells to externalize granules called Weibel-Palade bodies containing P-selectin within minutes of pathogen detection by macrophages. P-selectin appears on the surfaces of local endothelial cells. Selectins are one of three structural families of adhesion molecules important for leukocyte recruitment, with the other two being intercellular adhesion molecules ICAMs and leukocyte integrins. Later, within 2 hours of pathogen detection, the endothelial cells express mainly E-selectin. Shortly after P-selectin gets to the cell surface, mRNA encoding E-selectin is synthesized. Both selectins interact with the sulfated sialyl X that is present on the surface of neutrophils. Once inflammation has begun, neutrophils make up the first wave of cells that cross the blood vessel wall to enter an inflamed tissue. After this, monocytes cross the blood vessel wall and differentiated into tissue macrophages. In later stages of inflammation, other leukocytes such as eosinophils and lymphocytes also enter the infected site. Usually, leukocytes travel in the center of small blood vessels where blood flow is fastest. However, in inflamed tissues, the slower blood flow allows leukocytes to interact in large numbers with the endothelial cells lining the blood vessels. In addition, injury to blood vessels triggers two enzyme cascades, the kinin cascades and the coagulation cascade. The kinin system consists of plasma proteases. The eventual result of this cascade is the production of several inflammatory mediators, including bradykinin, a vasoactive peptide that increases vascular permeability and The inflammatory response is initiated within hours of infection or wounding and is characterized by edema, or swelling, heat, redness, and pain at the site. The inflammatory response is initiated within hours of infection or wounding and is characterized by edema, or swelling, heat, redness, and pain at the site of an infection or injury. These characteristics reflect 4 changes in local blood vessels. 1. The heat and redness during inflammation is the result of an increase in vascular diameter. The increase in vascular diameter also results in slower blood flow. 2. There is an increase in vascular permeability. During inflammation, endothelial cells have gaps between them. Fluid from the blood exits and accumulates in local tissues, resulting in edema and pain. The fluid contains plasma proteins such as complement proteins and mannose binding lectin, which aid in defending against pathogens. 3. Endothelial cells, which line the walls of blood vessels, are activated during inflammation. That is, endothelial cells express cell adhesion molecules that promote the binding of circulating leukocytes, otherwise known as white blood cells. 4. There is clotting in the microvessels at the site of infection, which prevents pathogens from spreading via the blood. The purpose of the inflammatory response is threefold. 1. Allows the body to defend itself from invading microorganisms. The increase in vascular diameter, along with the activated endothelial cells, results in leukocytes being able to attach to the endothelium, and then migrate into the tissues where they can attack pathogens. This process of leukocytes leaving the bloodstream and entering tissues is called extravasation. 2. Induces local blood clotting, and this creates a physical barrier preventing the infection from spreading into the bloodstream. 3. Promotes the repair of injured tissue. The state of inflammation is set up when tissues are physically damaged or when pathogens are recognized by macrophages and later by other white blood cells. These circumstances induces the release of a variety of inflammatory mediators which cause the inflammatory response. Macrophages and neutrophils secrete prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and platelet-activating factor (PAF), which are lipid mediators of inflammation. Then, macrophages secrete cytokines, which are substances released by cells of the immune system that affect other cells. One kind of cytokine are chemokines, which act as chemoattractants. Chemokines cause directed chemotaxis. Chemokines direct phagocytes to move towards the source of the chemokines, which are the sites where they are needed. 2 cytokines important to the inflammatory response are C5 and tumor necrosis factor alpha, or TNF-alpha. C5 stimulates respiratory burst, which is the rapid release of reactive oxygen species. It attracts neutrophils and monocytes. It also increases vascular permeability, increases expression of adhesion molecules on the endothelium, and causes local mast cells to release granules containing the inflammatory molecule histamine and TNF-alpha. TNF-alpha is a potent activator of endothelial cells. Activation of endothelial cells is central to the inflammatory response. Cytokines produced by macrophages, especially TNF-alpha, cause endothelial cells to externalize granules called Weibel-Palade bodies containing P-selectin within minutes of pathogen detection by macrophages. P-selectin appears on the surfaces of local endothelial cells. Selectins are one of 3 structural families of adhesion molecules important for leukocyte recruitment, with the other 2 being intercellular adhesion molecules ICAMs and leukocyte integrins. Later, within 2 hours of pathogen detection, the endothelial cells express mainly E-selectin. Shortly after P-selectin gets to the cell surface, mRNA-encoding E-selectin is synthesized. Both selectins interact with the sulfated sialyl X that is present on the surface of neutrophils. Once inflammation has begun, neutrophils make up the first wave of cells that cross the blood vessel wall to enter an inflamed tissue. After this, Monocytes cross the blood vessel wall and differentiated into tissue macrophages. In later stages of inflammation, other leukocytes such as eosinophils and lymphocytes also enter the infected site. Usually, leukocytes travel in the center of small blood vessels where blood flow is fastest. However, in inflamed tissues, the slower blood flow allows leukocytes to interact in large numbers with the endothelial cells lining the blood vessels. In addition, injury to blood vessels triggers two enzyme cascades, the kinin cascades and the coagulation cascade. The kinin system consists of plasma proteases. The eventual result of this cascade is the production of several inflammatory mediators, including bradykinin, a vasoactive peptide that increases vascular permeability and the kinin system consists of plasma proteases. The eventual result of this cascade is the production of several inflammatory mediators, including bradykinin, a vasoactive peptide that increases vascular permeability and causes pain. Pain makes you aware of the problem and causes you to immobilize that part of your body, helping prevent the spread of infection. The coagulation system is another protease cascade whose activation leads to formation of a fibrin clot. Currently, the infectious disease called new coronavirus infection is felt by at least two different diseases at the same time. The dying is expanding. One is similar to a cold. If you have a fever, it is a coronavirus infection. Positive in PCR test, it is this disease that shows a sexual reaction. Almost all of the positives in the PCR test of the sample collected from saliva are asymptomatic and healthy. The other has acute respiratory failure as an initial symptom. There is no fever. In other words, rather than suppressing immunity, it is not recognized as an object from the beginning. The inflammatory response is due to the signals sent to macrophages that causes structural abnormalities in the cells. I don't know why it doesn't generate heat, but it is an infectious disease through saliva, and its inflammatory reaction begins in the epithelial mucosal cells of the respiratory tract. It extends over a wide area of the lungs and extends flatly to the alveoli. It becomes a persistent infection. The patient's inflammatory response is found to be very painful. The inflammatory response probably extends systemically through lymphatics and blood vessels, especially inflammation of the esophagus and inflammation of the upper stomach. The illness persists. It is highly possible that a severe inflammatory reaction is continuously occurring in vascular endothelial cells that basically have no nerves of the pain system. To put it simply, the coronavirus is irrelevant. Also, from the last year of research, mutations in the coronavirus have been reported around the world. According to those studies, mutations occur frequently in the body to feed helper T cells like HIV. There are many mysterious research reports all over the world, such as the inclusion of breaking components. In any case, the new coronavirus has been detected in multiple animals such as cats and dogs across species. There is, in addition, most of the people who have a positive reaction from the sample collected from the nasal mucus of the nose are asymptomatic and healthy. 2. It seems that there are multiple negative people, but the coronavirus is lurking in the body, or it disappears spontaneously. I don't know what it is. When the proportion of positive and asymptomatic persons is 99% or more, it is considered that the pathogen is no longer the cause. In other words, it is not infectious from the beginning. The pathogen, the source of infection, and the route of infection are unknown. And it is not known whether they are intermediate organisms, so it can only be guessed. However, in the United States, the population is about 300 million. The number of coronavirus detections continues to appear in about 300,000 people every day. There's a record that about 20,000 people are hospitalized for respiratory failure per day. As this infection has no seasonal peaks, it will continue and persist throughout the year. Of these, only about 1,000 to 2,000 corpses per day. Most of them are 70 years old or older. It has been reported that younger people are hospitalized transiently and seem to have healed spontaneously. We have searched for all existing compounds on the planet, but no therapeutic agent has been shown to be effective. Treatment at the hospital: it seems that painkillers, steroids and antibiotics are administered intravenously or with a ventilator sprayer. However, the timing and cause of the positive reaction of coronavirus changing to the negative reaction are unknown. No reports of recurrence have been publicly reported. Once a person becomes positive due to infection, it becomes difficult to reintegrate into society as a worker. In other words, many elderly people die of respiratory failure or multiple organ failure throughout the year, 400 times 2,000. The number of people will be 800,000 and 800,000. This is on the rise in the future. No one can predict the future. However, the age distribution of corpses may also fluctuate in the younger direction, too. And above all, it seems that the period from infection to death is short. They die in just one day to at most 1 week. Even if you receive treatment with a respirator for 1 month, you will end up with many. He suffers from organ failure and dies. According to the anatomical results, various organs are severely damaged and can be called normal cells. The vesicles are only traces. The organ itself is another object. The prevalence is low, but tends to increase, as can be seen from statistical results around the world. Taking Japan, which has a population of 100 million, as an example, the number of 65-year-olds who die of pneumonia is about 70,000 a year. The cause is unknown and the cause of death has been treated as viral pneumonia. In the case of Japan, there are only about 500 seriously injured people with the current infectious disease on an annual basis. It is estimated that there will be less than 10 corpses every day. In other words, less than 10,000 people die each year. What causes this to be? For those who die of viral pneumonia, it is related to the custom of putting it in a combustion furnace and burning it immediately without checking. Perhaps people who die of cancer or vascular disease have burned it without knowing the underlying cause of death. Not in, mysteriously. The number of impatients is extremely small compared to other countries. In the case of Asian countries, including China and Japan, the government does not disclose the details, so it is only a guess. Newly infected persons submitted to the health center are actually hospitalized rather than the close contacts investigated by the health center. Considering that there are many people at the required level, there are only about 2,000 people per day. Most of the people who are said to be seriously ill are elderly people aged 65 and over, and only 10 or less per day. Half of them are completely cured in a week or a month. However, this infectious disease causes various disorders called sequelae. This concept of sequelae is a term for people who have a negative reaction from a positive person in a virus test. However, it is a completely wrong thinking pattern. This is clearly a persistent chronic disease, not a sequela. However, remove the ventilator and do it yourself, you will be able to breathe. The main symptom is systemic persistent chronic inflammation, especially in multiple organs including respiratory tract and stomach. It continues to grow and can cause significant damage to blood vessels. The cause of this is thought to be the customs and cultural background common to Asian countries. In the case of the United States, the population is tripled, so the number of corpses of old people due to pneumonia is 200,000 to 40. It is thought that there are about 10,000 people with this infectious disease. The number of corpses is now about 800,000. Compared to 2,000 daily, usually it is twice the actual number of elderly people who die of pneumonia or multiple organ failure. Political activity is more active than China, as Japan is a defeated nation in the United States and is virtually a colony. All follow the situation in America, since the United States has become the world's largest victim. The domestic situation is tight at the political and administrative levels. It is not the private sector that is concerned about infectious diseases. The most serious are slander and fear of losing work, all with strong, persistent, inflammation-like illnesses. It is thought that he is living his daily life while hiding his symptoms. Even if saliva is involved in infection, we do not know its pathogen, causative agent, or infectivity. 1 year is about to pass. There is an abnormal population of 1.6 billion in China. But the situation is uncertain because the communication network and hospitals are state-owned. Even the mainland Chinese don't know if this is happening. The same is true for Russia and South Korea. And the situation in India, Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asian countries where poverty is serious, is unknown. There are many points, however. A vaccine for this new virus called coronavirus has been developed and vaccinated all over the world. Has begun. It's just an abnormal situation. Moreover, even if antibodies are produced, is the expression of antibodies in the epithelial mucosa very small. It does not exist at all and has no preventive effect. This also applies to other pathogens, which are taken by macrophages after destroying the alveoli of the lungs. After being squeezed, an acquired immune response will occur in the blood. However, in this infectious disease, not only innate immunity but also the activation of such acquired immune system is not observed. That is, from the beginning, the immune system is a foreign body. But it does not recognize it as an object, probably not detected by electron microscopy or genetic testing. Invisible in this world, but in outer space it resembles an unknown object called dark matter, whose existence cannot be confirmed with a naked eye, which is said to exist in large numbers. It is also accompanied by mysterious synchronicity. The same infection distribution can be seen at the same time in different places regardless of spatial distance. There is no convergence in the infection distribution. In an endless state suddenly appear anytime, anywhere. Whatever the infectious disease of this, the endless state will continue for a long time in the future, and economic activity will not be a Great Depression, but all over the world city blockades are everywhere. In conclusion, in this situation, human men are not medically and economically able to work, and human women are not in an environment where you can get pregnant and raise children.
Standing in the garden, just think of what we're starting. I've been waiting for this day all my life. You'll be dressed up in your finest, you'll see beauty at its brightest. We'll have all we ever needed and more. And it feels like a wedding day. Feels like a wedding day. And it feels like a wedding day. Come and take me away. Walk me down the path together this day. Memories last forever. We'll be hand in hand and heart to heart. Make me laugh the way you do. Your smile lights up every room, and I see my future glowing in your eyes. And it feels like a wedding day. Feels like a wedding day. And it feels like a wedding day. Come and take me away. like a wedding day. Feels like a wedding day. And it feels like a wedding day. Come and take me away. Come and take me away. Come and take me away.
you. You're the one who can make me happy. You know you're in love when you come for the sea, because reality is finally better than
What does perfect even mean? Is there even such a thing? Ooh, can we switch up all the rules and imagine a utopia? Darling, I'm just so fed up with these expectations. They keep weighing me down. My heart is begging me to get the hell out of my head. I'm gonna live inside the upside down for a minute and pretend. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Whoa, whoa. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Whoa, whoa. And if I say it enough, it gets ingrained in my head, and I start to see. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. 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 Whoa. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Disgusted with myself and I'm disgusted with the way we're told to have a certain face, a certain weight, because we aren't pixels on a screen. No, we're human, we breathe. Every single thing we see curated, it's overrated. These expectations, they keep weighing me down. My heart is begging me to get the hell out of my head. I'm gonna live inside the upside down for a minute and pretend. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Whoa. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Whoa. And if I say it enough, it gets ingrained in my head, and I start to think. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Whoa. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. Honey, I'm a perfect 10.
Let's sing a song full of hope, full of pain. Why don't you sing along, my friend? For it's our last refrain. Forever young, ever strong, ever brave. Memories like this never end. No, they don't fade away. So when I'm gone, oh, when I'm gone, I'll be right there, close to the sun. Keep holding on, keep holding on, and I'll be right there, close to the sun, close to the sun. Close to the sun. Here's to the ones who let shine through the rain, the ones who stood for something more. We won't forget your names. The tide is high, say goodbye, we set it sail, and all those midnight secrets told, we'll take them to the grave. So when I'm gone, oh, when I'm gone, I'll be right there, close to the sun. Keep holding on, keep holding on, and I'll be right there, close to the sun, close to the sun. Close to the sun. So when I'm gone, oh, when I'm gone, I'll be right there, close to the sun. Keep holding on, keep holding on, and I'll be right there, close to the sun, close to the sun. There's just so much left to say. Wanna get to know you in every kind of way, but you speak it in tongues. You take the breath from my lungs. It should be shaking in fear, but instead I just want you here. Screaming at you, but it's like screaming at a wall. My words get lost in translation. Can you feel my frustration? I'm just trying to break through, but you make it hard when you act how you do. 'Cause you speak it in tongues. You take the breath from my lungs. It should be shaking in fear, but instead I just want you here. Screaming at you, but it's like screaming at a wall. My words get lost in translation. Can you feel my frustration?
I'm a little bit lost now, but somehow I don't wanna be anywhere else with anyone else. And you've been getting on my very last nerve, but love hurts, so I'ma say that it's okay with me to just let this be. I know we've been on hold, trying to work this out. We push and we pull, I hope we don't fall from all of these ups and these downs. I know, throughout it all, you're not gonna let me down. I'm holding on to all of you, baby, I won't let you go, nah, nah.
I can't let you go, all alone in the dark. I can't let you go. I can't let you go, all alone in the dark. I can't let you go.
I know I promised that we wouldn't be silly, you and me, picking at the little fights over things that we should just let right. We were yelling things I know that we didn't mean. It's a hard thing, baby, when we're in so deep and we can't control these feelings. I know we've been on hold, trying to work this out. We push and we pull, I hope we don't fall from all of these ups and these downs. I know, throughout it all, you're not gonna let me down. I'm holding on to all of you, baby, I won't let you go, nah, nah.
I can't let you go, all alone in the dark. I can't let you go. I can't let you go, all alone in the dark. I can't let you go.
Baby, I won't let you go, nah, nah. It can be deceiving, I gotta know that you really mean it. We can take it slow, just hold on, 'cause I can't let you go. Deceiving, I gotta know that you really mean it. Take it slow, baby, I won't let you go, nah, nah.
I can't let you go.
Isn't easy to say, 'cause we haven't talked in a month. And when you see me with him, you'll probably think I moved on. Yeah, I lie to him when I say that I'm over you. Yeah, I know it's messed up, but the truth is, every time I'm with him, it just makes me miss you more. Even though there's someone new, yeah, they'll never be my cure. And I know they say it helps, but I swear I was feeling better before. I guess I miss you more. I miss you more. I guess I miss you more. Got me thinking about you, probably more than I should. And I know that it's wrong, but what can I do? And every time I'm with him, it just makes me miss you more. Even though there's someone new, yeah, they'll never be my cure. And I know they say it helps, but I swear I was feeling better before. I guess I miss you more. I miss I miss you. Tell me, would you pick up if I called you right now, so that I could tell you, so that I could tell you I don't wanna be with him, I can't do it anymore, I'm not getting over you, maybe you're the only cure, I'm not ready to move on, can we go back to how it was before? I guess I miss you more, I miss you more, I guess I miss you more, I miss you more, I guess I miss.
Pacing back and forth. Oh, I don't understand why you're standing right here. All your shots have scored. No, scratching at the scars you left on my skin. We fight and we fall and we rise through it all till we find what we want. Then we lose it all again. Your touch on my skin, pull me close, take me in. Just me, just you, lost in the moment. Lost in the moment. Nowhere left to run. Oh, trying to bide our time. We know it's all done. Take a bow, you win. Oh, swam against your tide. It keeps pulling me in. We fight and we fall. Can we rise through it all till we find what we want? And we lose it all again. Your touch on my skin, pull me close, take me in. Just me, just you, lost in the moment. Lost in the moment. Lost in the moment. Though I've tried, I just keep falling all over again. And our hands are tight, can't fight it. Can we go through this again? Will we fight and we fall? Can we rise through it all till we find what we want? Then we lose it all again. Your touch on my skin, pull me close, take me in. Just me, just you, lost in the moment. Lost in the moment. You got me lost in the moment. Lost in the moment.
くセレナで二度と会えないのせめてあと少しだけ愛を伝えたいあなたはもういないゼロに戻れない世界線鼓動が震えてただ抱き尽くすだけ願いは空にかける光つかめはしないせめてあなたのこと思うだけでいいあなたも記憶もこの痛みでさえ煉獄セレナで届かない幻影